What's the reality behind all the razzle-dazzle? Welcome to MsMojo, and today we'll be unraveling the shocking true story behind Chicago.
Give 'em the old razzle-dazzle, razzle-dazzle look. Give 'em an act with lots of flashing, and the reaction will be passionate.
We're all familiar with the 2002 motion picture Chicago, a satirical crime story that became the first musical in almost 34 years to win the Academy Award for Best Picture. It's also common knowledge that this film was based on a 1975 Broadway musical. While a solid success upon release, the Broadway show saw a resurgence in popularity in 1996 following the O.J. Simpson trial, winning the Tony for Best Revival of a Musical.
It's odd. Chicago's been relevant no matter what decade you do it in.
People are responding to it. To this whole, we have a big courtroom scene, and it's not unlike the O.J. Simpson feeding frenzy.
What you might not know is that this highly successful film and stage musical derived from a 1926 play by Maureen Dallas Watkins. This non-musical play inspired two lesser-known film adaptations, a 1927 silent picture produced by Cecil B. DeMille, and a 1942 comedy entitled Roxie Hart.
And then we both grabbed for the gun. And get that straight, we both grabbed for it. And then everything went purple.
Before the Oscar-winning film, the Tony-winning musical, or even the original play, though, there were two very real court cases that started it all.
Who says that murder's not an art?
Prior to writing Chicago, Watkins spent 8 months as a Chicago Tribune reporter, her specialty being courthouse stories.
I got a job at the Chicago Tribune, and I'm gonna investigate what I gotta investigate.
That's what she really wanted to do.
Watkins most notably covered the trials of Beulah May Annan and Belva Gardner. While their cases were unrelated, Watkins noticed several parallels between these two Chicago residents. Both had rocky histories with the men in their lives, both were suspected of murder, and both had considerable evidence working against them. Watkins would become the greatest link between Annan and Gardner, however, portraying them both as jazz babies who had been victimized by guys and booze.
By the end of the week, I'm gonna have Roxie's name in the front page of every newspaper in town. Sweetest little jazz killer ever to hit Chicago. That's the angle I'm after.
The two main ladies in Chicago were ultimately modeled after Annan and Gardner. Beulah Annan was the basis for Roxie Hart, an aspiring actress who achieves her dreams of stardom after shooting her lover Fred Casely in a fit of passion.
With all this publicity, I got me a world full of yes! The name on everybody's lips is gonna be Roxie.
Likewise, Annan had an affair with a man named Harry Kalstead, who she met while working as a bookkeeper at Tennant's Model Laundry. At the time, Annan was also married to a mechanic named Albert Annan, who served as the inspiration for Roxie's hopelessly devoted husband, Amos Hart.
What if the world slandered my name? Why, he'd be right there, taking the blame.
In Chicago, Roxie murders Fred after he lies to her about having connections to the entertainment industry.
You lied to me.
That's life, sweetheart, that's life.
This differs from reality, as Annan wasn't seeking fame, although she possibly wanted more out of her humdrum life.
Give them just enough to get them good and hungry. And always leave them wanting more.
While the motives may have been slightly different, Annan did shoot Kalstead on April 3, 1924. The lovers were in the bedroom that Annan shared with her husband when a heated argument supposedly broke out. According to Annan's original account of what happened, both her and Kalstead reached for a gun after drinking wine.
He had strength and she had none. And yet we both reached for the gun. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, we both, oh yes, we both, oh yes, we both reached for the gun, the gun, the gun, the gun.
Annan got to the weapon first and fired as Kalstead started getting dressed. Listening to Hula Loo repeatedly, Annan waited for her lover to die before finally calling her husband, claiming that he, quote, tried to make love to her.
And while he was laying on the floor, she played hula loo, and she danced around his grave, and she made multiple cocktails, and she drank them.
Annan would alter her story multiple times, at one point confessing and later asserting that it was self-defense. The prosecution, meanwhile, attempted to depict Annan as a woman scorned who turned on Kalstead when he threatened to leave her.
Do you have any advice for young girls seeking to avoid a life of jazz and drink?
Absolutely, yes. Mrs. Hart feels that it was the tragic combination of liquor and jazz which led to her downfall. Next question.
In the end, Annan claimed that she was pregnant and got into a scuffle with Kalstead when he found out.
Oh, I only hope the fall didn't hurt the baby.
Baby?
Like Roxie, Annan's pregnancy was fabricated, but it earned her plenty of sympathy points among the all-male jurors, and she was acquitted on May 25, 1924. Keeping in character with Amos, Annan's husband had assembled the best legal defense possible, and he remained loyal to his wife until the trial ended.
There ain't no baby.
The day after she was freed, however, Annan broke the news that she had left her husband, saying that he was, quote, too slow. Where Watkins named Annan the, quote, beauty of the cell block, she described Belva Gartner as the, quote, most stylish of Murderous Row.
Not in memory do we recall so fiendish and horrible a double homicide.
Baby, you couldn't buy that kind of publicity.
Couldn't buy it? I guess I can keep this then.
Gartner provided the inspiration for Velma Kelly, a nightclub performer who murders her husband and sister after catching them together.
The spread eagle.
In real life, Gartner was indeed a cabaret singer, but she allegedly murdered her lover Walter Law, a married father of one. In the Cell Block Tango number, Velma claims that she'd been drinking and blacked out, finding blood on her hands when she came to. This is similar to the account that Gartner gave the authorities.
It wasn't until later, when I was washing the blood off my hands, I even knew they were dead. They had it coming! They had it coming! They had it coming! All along.
On March 11, 1924, Law was spotted in the driver's seat of Gartner's car with a discharged gun and gin bottle by his side. The following morning, Gartner was discovered in her apartment, bloody clothing lining the floor. Gartner confessed that she had been driving Law under the influence of alcohol, but claimed to have no recollection of what happened after.
Velma Kelly. You were the Velma Kelly. You know, I was there that night. I was there the night that you got arrested.
Yeah, you and half of Chicago.
She was subsequently arrested for Law's murder. At the time, Law's friend and co-worker, Pale E. Goodwin, testified against Gartner. Quote, Walter told me Monday that he planned to take out more life insurance because Mrs. Gartner threatened to kill him, Goodwin recounted. 3 weeks before, he told me she locked him in her flat with her and threatened to stab him with a knife unless he stayed there.
You swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
And then some.
Nevertheless, Gartner stood by her innocence, telling Watkins, quote, no woman can love a man enough to kill him.
A woman would never kill a man because a man would never mean enough to a woman for her to just murder somebody.
Obviously! And Maureen is like, these women are obviously guilty.
The jury apparently saw eye to eye with Gartner, as a not guilty verdict was reached in June 1924. It didn't hurt that Gartner had a slick lawyer, who painted a narrative where Law took his own life. In Chicago, Roxie and Velma both seek legal aid from Billy Flynn, who wins over juries by turning his clients into celebrities.
You are a phony celebrity. You're a flash in the pan. In a couple of weeks, no one's gonna give a shit about you. That's Chicago.
Flynn was a composite character of W.W. O'Brien, who defended Annan, and William Scott Stewart, who defended Gartner.
I don't like to blow my own horn, but believe me, if Jesus Christ had lived in Chicago today and if he had $5,000 and he'd come to me, things would have turned out differently.
Outside of their strong legal defense, Annan and Gartner did plenty to secure their own freedom.
We have got to look good because that's what this shit is about, is looking good.
And they're like, if I cut my hair and I do my mascara right and I go do my eyeliner right and I move my hips right and I cry at the right moment, they're not going to convict me.
The two even started a fashion school of sorts at the Cook County Jail to make themselves more presentable to the all-male jurors. you'd be naive to think that looks have never factored into a jury's opinion of the accused.
And now, the 6 merry murderesses of the Cook County Jail in their rendition of the Cell Block Tango.
Consider Sabella Nitti, an Italian immigrant who was accused of murdering her missing husband.
She meets Sabella Nitti, an Italian immigrant who is accused of murdering her husband. She says,
"He hurt me. I did kill him, but because he hurt me."
Where Annan and Gartner were both glamorized in the press, Nitti was described in the Chicago Daily Tribune as a, quote, dumb, crouching, animal-like Italian peasant. Although she was innocent, Nitti became Cook County's first woman to be sentenced to death.
Not guilty.
In Chicago, Nitti somewhat parallels Katalin Hilinski, a Hungarian inmate who pleads innocence but is hanged regardless. Nitti nearly met the same fate, but the public's opinion changed after she received a retrial and a makeover. While the evidence hadn't changed, Nitti was found innocent this time, and many attributed this to her new look. Although Roxie Hart gets a fairy tale ending in Chicago, Annan's life after her trial wasn't so grand, great, swell, or fun.
And that's good, isn't it grand? Isn't it great? Isn't it swell? Isn't it fun? Isn't it?
In 1927, she was briefly married to a boxer named Edward Harlib. Their short-lived marriage ended in a divorce settlement of $5,000, which would be roughly $74,000 by today's standards. In 1928, Annan died of tuberculosis at age 32. As for Gartner, she remarried her ex-husband William again in 1925. The couple didn't stay together long, as yet another divorce was filed the following year. William Gartner claimed that his wife threatened to kill him and accused her of being an alcoholic. On that note, Mrs. Gartner was arrested for a DUI that November. Eventually moving in with her sister Ethel Kroshauer, Velma Gartner died at the age of 80 on May 14, 1965 due to natural causes. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. It's debatable if Watkins' articles were the main reason why Annan and Gartner got off. Any way you look at it, though, Watkins' stories only helped their innocent verdicts.
Comprehensible, comprehensible, not a bit reprehensible. It's so defensible.
The irony is that Watkins thought both women were guilty, and she was not happy about the outcome of either trial.
I have been a part of freeing these clearly guilty women who use their feminine wiles to get free.
While Watkins wrote nearly 20 other plays, as well as a few screenplays, Chicago left the greatest impact. Director Bob Fosse first expressed interest in turning Chicago into a stage musical in the 1960s. Watkins turned down his offer, supposedly not wanting to further romanticize Annan or Gartner.
It'll never work.
Why not?
Because I hate you.
There's only one business in the world where that's no problem at all.
Fosse and Gwen Verdon remained interested in the project, however, reaching out to Watkins numerous times to no chagrin.
When people don't even care about the truth, when all they care about is what sells, when everything, politics, the news, life and death, it's all just entertainment.
It wasn't until Watkins' death on August 10, 1969, that Fosse, Verdon, and producer Richard Fryer were able to secure the rights from her estate.
But guess what, folks? That's all smoke and mirrors. You're murderers and you're liars. That's who you are. Dance like that.
The franchise that stemmed from Watkins' stories went on to make hundreds of millions in revenue, win various awards, and all that jazz. Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from MsMojo. And be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.